Ralph Cabbage, Aquaman, Knox. I'm going to show you just the basics of what you need after you already own a regulator, what you need to hook up CO2 and some of the differences between the different types of diffusers and bubble counters. So first of all, the different types of bubble counters and diffusers. You got to start with the tubing. You can buy, now tubing and for your aquarium air pumps and your CO2 are different. Typically speaking, you're going to have three types of tubing. I made another video just showing tubing. There's a green, which is the highest tensile strength, the black, and the clear, which are in the middle. These are stiffer and they're not as pliable as standard airline tubing. And the reason that's important is if you're going to be hooking them to glassware, just go ahead, get you a mug, 2.5 minutes or whatever it takes in your little microwave to boil some hot water, and dip the ends in that hot water. That'll make sure that when you slide this over your nice expensive piece of glassware, you're not going to break the tip. And it'll also give you a good seal. So remember that. Pick the color of the tubing that you want. Again, the higher strength tubing is the green. The black and the clear, they're about the same. I'll have links for that down below in the video. So after you've got the tubing, every single person, you'll need to have a check valve of some sort. And I like to do 2 check valves actually on the very best systems that I do. So I'll take a check valve like this, which this is a double check valve. So it's a bubble counter and it has it's all brass construction. All brass construction. You open up the top of it to fill it with water. It's got an O-ring seal, and this can be mounted directly to the top of one of your regulators. Okay, so you would just unscrew this. There's a little O-ring that's inside there that you want to put on first. So the O-ring goes right here, right there, and then you want to screw this down on top of the regulator, and then you've got a bubble counter. Now that's nice and it's great because you can be down below and you can adjust your needle valve and get the bubbles per second. But I like to also have, I think the more bubble counters and spirals and things that you have, I just find it easier to adjust the flow. But I also like the way it looks, and I want to be able to go over to my aquarium and see my bubble counter's okay, without having to go down below and go, oh, my bubbles are okay. Now with CO2, you're going to start these off anywhere from 2 to 3 bubbles per second. You've got to use the charts. You've got to use a tester. I'll talk about that again in a minute. Make sure your CO2 is right for your tank. Every tank's going to consume based on the plants. More CO2 based on the aeration and water movement may need more or less bubbles, but you can start there. Make sure you test it. So we're not going to talk about regulators right now, but we'll continue on. So you've got your bubble counter. First of all, these are the tank mount types. You've got black and you've got the all brass. This is a fibrous black plastic. A lot of the saltwater people like that because it's highly resistant to corrosion, or salt water for the CO2 use with calcium reactors. But we're going to focus on plants for the rest of this. Next, I go ahead and I put another check valve. I know it's redundant. It sounds a little bit crazy, but I put another check valve. Or if you don't have a check valve like this, you definitely need one. There's 3 types. You've got, actually there's 4 types. You've got Azu makes a plastic high pressure check valve, which works very well. Up Aqua has a patented double spring check valve that works very well. It's a little bigger, but it's heavy duty valve, and you can actually slide the tubing on and then use these end pieces for compression, so there's no chance of that tubing coming off. Hydro Aquatics, this is a stainless steel check valve with a spring. And then lastly, Up Aqua makes, this is a bubble counter, a plastic bubble counter and CO2 diffuser. The advantage to this being you can change out these CO2. You put that right inside the rubber there. Seal it back on the top after you've had it full of air. It's plastic. It goes down in the aquarium, but it actually has a check valve built into it as well. I wouldn't rely on that solely. I would always go to the double setup, but that could be your secondary. Disadvantage to the plastic type CO2 diffuser, of course, got a suction cup to stick in the inside, and plastic's just not as cool as glass. The advantage is the price for all the features that you get are very nice, and you can replace the stone. So after we go from the check valve, we go to the bubble counter. Again, bubble counters I like spiral bubble counters, and Up and Hydra make a really big spiral one that's really cool. Very nice though if you want top of the line. Viv makes a round one, which once this has been put in place and with water, it'll sit against the tank like that, and you can see the bubble counter. It's another long type Viv, which you'll recognize, similar to, same quality, similar to some of the ADA models that are out there on the market. That's the Viv long bubble counter. This really gets down to personal preference. Then you come over the top of the tank, and some of the pieces, this is called joint wear. And what joint wear does, you don't have to have this. You can go over the top of the aquarium with the tubing, but this prevents any bends. And Viv makes a whole series of joint wear, as well as Hydra and Mr. Aqua. This particular airstone comes with this piece of joint wear, and you can turn it. You can have the rigid on the inside for the glass to hold it in place better, or you could turn it and you could have the short distance connected by a piece of tubing go into the airstone and flip it around. And then it hooks with suction cups. This particular unit comes with 2 suction cups. You can put one on the small stem, or you could use that suction cup out here and secure your bubble counter. And there's another place for a larger suction cup, and you could use that for your diffuser. Glass diffusers, they look cool, they work really well. Once the ceramic is gone, and that, from my experience, is a long time, you have to buy a new one when those are shot. Second type of diffuser would be a spiral type diffuser. Again, this acts as a bubble counter. This is by Up Aqua. It's one of my favorite pieces. I just like to see the spiral. Again, like I said before, I also believe that it's easier to regulate with that pressure built into that spiral. I think it's easier to regulate your needle valves. Mr. Hydra, Up Aqua, they all have a version of this that I think are the best that are on the market. So that would be another one that you can use. And then lastly, you have stainless steel. So stainless steel, this is by Hydra Aquatics. They clip onto the tank. You're going to get different lengths of these depending on the height of your tank. This is just a test tank. The stainless steel are nice. You never have to worry about algae or cleaning them like the other units. You can disassemble them and unscrew the top and replace the stone as needed. And if you like the look of stainless steel, that's the way to go. There's different lengths of these and different size clips depending on the type of rimless aquarium that you have. Again, you'll start your CO2. We'll fill this up and come back, and we'll show you some of these working, and you'll get an idea of what it looks like when the CO2 is running. Remember, once you're using CO2, you want to have, this is a drop checker, okay? Drop checkers, you fill them with water, and you fill these with the reagent like you would on a standard drop checker. This is an internal plastic drop checker, and they'll give you a reading, and I've actually got that turned around. They go this way, and they'll give you a reading so you can follow the chart and determine what your CO2 level is. I'll put a link to the chart below, but you can use a chart to also test the water for CO2. So you're going to look for those charts and get into the ideal range on your CO2. Now, how do I get the water in these? A lot of people ask that or in that. And I use, Viv has, it's a little pipette. Mr. Aqua makes a bigger one that you can hook to a hose. And you can literally use this to turn upside down, put your fluid in to solution, spin it, and then put it right back into place. Same with the bubble counters. You can disconnect your airline hose or your CO2 hose, and you can use this to go down the line and fill your bubble counters. These are easy. You can just remove the top and put some distilled water in there, and you're good to go. So that's the way that you get the water into those. So in recap, again, after you have your regulator in place, you want a bubble counter. Decide if you want a bubble counter directly on your regulator if it doesn't already come with one. These have check valves built in. Consider adding a secondary check valve for safety. Always add another bubble counter so you have a quick access and it looks really cool on your aquarium. And then you choose between plastic, glass upper end, and stainless steel upper end diffusers. That's how the CO2 gets in the tank. How do you choose the size of the diffuser? Will depend on your aquarium. The bigger diameter the diffuser is for the bigger aquariums. There's no set size for a tank because your bubble counter is going to determine that. But if you've got a really big 120 or larger tank, you're going to want to use Viv and some of the really large diameter diffusers so that you just get more dispersion. If you don't use diffusers, and that's what we're focusing on here, in another video I'll show you reactors, and there are other CO2 reactors that you could use for dispersion of the CO2. For the purposes of this video, I want to show you glassware and stuff that goes in the tank. It's cool, it's interesting, and it's the easiest stuff to use. Ralph Cabbage, Aquaman Knox. Have a great day.